The baby monitor flickered beside her plate, its faint static filling the silence of the penthouse dining room. Elena stared at the untouched dinner across from her, the steak, the wine, the seat that should have been occupied by her husband, and felt something strange. Not sadness, not anger, not even disappointment, just nothing. And that terrified her more than every night he'd stayed out late, every headline linking him to another woman, every lie he'd told with a straight face. Because when a woman stops feeling, she's already halfway gone. A soft whimper drifted through the monitor. Elena instantly rose, abandoning the cold dinner she had cooked hours earlier. Her heels clicked against marble as she hurried to the nursery, the only room in this penthouse that still felt alive. There, under the warm glow of a dim lamp, lay her daughter, Grace. Her tiny fists rested beside her cheeks, dark curls plastered to her forehead, chest rising and falling in the fragile rhythm of infant sleep. Elena felt her heart soften, one of the few times it still could. She reached into the crib, gently lifting her daughter into her arms. Grace stirred, her eyelids fluttering open, revealing hazy, innocent brown eyes that looked just like Alexander's. Alexander Kane, the man the business world worshipped, the man the tabloids chased like a storm, the man her heart had once believed in. The man who was right now in some downtown rooftop lounge with another woman. Again. Elena pressed a trembling kiss to Grace's cheek. "I won't let you grow up thinking this is love," she whispered. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a plea. It was a vow. Outside, the city glittered in tall, arrogant lights, lights her husband worshipped more than his own family. Her mind replayed the news alert she had received an hour earlier. CEO Alexander Kane spotted entering exclusive club with supermodel Alyssa Hart. No wife in sight again. Her pulse didn't race. Her chest didn't tighten. Instead, Elena felt her bones go still with clarity. The kind of clarity that permanently changes a woman. She laid Grace back in the crib and stood there staring down at her daughter, this little human who deserved more than a broken home wrapped in luxury. The house was quiet, too quiet, and her heart felt like it was being held underwater. Memories rose like bruises. The night she went into labor alone. The night he missed Grace's first smile. The night he called her dramatic for asking him to come home. The night she begged him to choose his family, and he chose his reputation instead. Elena wiped a tear she hadn't even felt fall. Then she walked straight to the bedroom, opened the bottom drawer of her vanity, and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside lay the flash drive, the one she had filled with months of receipts, photos, hotel records, credit card charges, proof of every betrayal. But tonight wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. She placed the pouch into her purse. Then she went to the closet, reached behind boxes she had stacked a week ago, and pulled out a small suitcase already packed with essentials for her and Grace. Grace's birth certificate, diapers, formula, her favorite stuffed lamb, Elena's passport, a copy of the lease to the small house she had secretly secured 2 weeks earlier. Her heart pounded with a new kind of strength, a mother's strength. No one warns men about this. When a woman becomes a mother, she becomes capable of leaving, even the man she once would have died for. She zipped the suitcase quietly, careful not to wake Grace, and rolled it toward the front door. Tonight she wouldn't leave. Not yet. She would give him one last chance to be the man she prayed he could be. Not for her, but for their daughter. She returned to the dining room, her face calm, her heart finally steady. But when the elevator chimed shortly before 2 a.m., announcing Alexander's return, Elena felt the truth settle inside her like a final breath. He was already too late. The penthouse door clicked open, followed by the not-so-subtle scent of expensive cologne mixed with someone else's perfume. Elena didn't turn around right away. She just tightened her grip on her water glass and kept her eyes fixed on the glow of the city outside. Alexander Kane stepped inside with the swagger of a man who had never been told no, tossing his keys on the marble counter like a teenager past curfew. His jacket hung loosely over one shoulder, hair tousled, tie half undone. He looked every part the powerful CEO who owned the night. But beneath the confidence was something else, slight, nearly invisible, but there, a crack. "Elena," he said, spotting her at the table. "You're awake?" She didn't look at him. "It's 1:57 a.m. You said you'd be home by 9. "I got caught up with clients," he replied smoothly, the lie slipping off his tongue as easily as breathing. He didn't realize yet that she no longer cared enough to challenge it. Instead, Elena gave a small nod. "Grace cried for an hour. I finally got her to fall asleep." That made him pause, barely, but Elena saw it, the tiny flinch at the mention of his daughter. Grace, the baby he loved in theory more than in practice. "That's good," he said, setting down his phone. "You should have called me." She looked up at him at last, her eyes steady, her tone calm in a way that chilled him. "I didn't need anything from you." He blinked. Elena had never said something like that. Not to him, not in this tone. Without waiting for his response, she stood, gathering the now cold dishes. Alexander frowned. "Elena, what's with the attitude? Is this about the press again? You know they twist everything." She didn't react, didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She simply said, "I'm tired," and walked to the kitchen sink. He followed her, irritation rising. Alexander Kane wasn't used to being ignored, not by his board, not by the world, and certainly not by his wife. "You've been acting strange," he muttered, cold, distant. Her hands stilled in the sink. "Oh, the irony." She turned slightly, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "Have I? Or are you finally noticing?" The comment hit him harder than he expected. "Elena, I'm trying to talk to you." "And I'm trying to keep our daughter asleep," she whispered sharply, glancing toward the hallway. "Save the performance for daytime." He recoiled. "Performance?" Elena shut off the water, wiped her hands, and finally walked past him. She no longer moved with the soft submission he was used to. There was a new firmness in her steps, quiet but fierce. He didn't like it. Not one bit. When she reached the bedroom, she paused. "You should sleep in the guest room tonight," she said without turning back. "You smell like someone who wasn't at a meeting." Alexander froze. That hit its mark. "Elena, good night." The bedroom door closed softly, not slammed, but that softness felt worse. Calmness was something new, something he didn't understand. Alexander stood in the hallway staring at the closed door as if it had personally betrayed him. He rubbed his forehead. This wasn't normal. Elena was supposed to be gentle, forgiving, predictable. She wasn't supposed to sound like she'd already walked away emotionally. He chalked it up to exhaustion, maybe postpartum stress, maybe loneliness, maybe, but the truth, the one he refused to confront, whispered anyway, maybe she's slipping away. The next morning, Elena was up before dawn, feeding Grace in the nursery. She rocked the baby gently, humming softly, her eyes puffy from a sleepless night, but her spine straight. When Alexander appeared in the doorway, she didn't greet him with a smile. She didn't greet him at all. He leaned on the frame, observing the scene he rarely took part in. Grace nestled comfortably against Elena's chest, tiny fingers holding onto her shirt. For a moment, Alexander felt irrelevant. He cleared his throat. "Morning." "Good morning," she replied flatly, adjusting Grace on her shoulder. He stepped closer, reaching to touch Grace's back. Elena instinctively shifted away. Not dramatically, not angrily, just enough to avoid him. He felt the rejection like a slap. "Elena, are we okay?" She didn't lie. "We haven't been okay for a long time." That opened a wound he didn't know he had. "Elena, look." Her phone buzzed from the dresser. She checked the screen and her tone shifted instantly, gentle, respectful, warm. "Hi, Patricia. Yes, I'm ready to come in today." Alexander stiffened. "Patricia? Your lawyer?" Elena didn't break eye contact with the baby. "Yes, I have an appointment." "For what?" She kissed Grace's forehead. "Self-respect." He stared at her, baffled, deeply unsettled. Elena stood, adjusting Grace on her hip. Don't worry, Alexander, I'll be home before dinner. Before he could ask anything else, she walked past him, carrying their daughter in her arms, moving with resolve he had never seen in her before. And as she left the room, something icy slid down Alexander's spine. For the first time in his life, he felt the truth. His wife was preparing to leave him. He just didn't know how close she was to the door. Elena held Grace's car seat with one hand and pushed open the door to Patricia Monroe's office with the other. The quiet lobby smelled of fresh paper and lemon polish, clean, organized, safe. Everything her marriage wasn't. Patricia, her attorney, looked up immediately from behind her desk. "You're early," she said, rising with a warm smile. Her tone softened when she glanced at the baby. "And you brought little Grace." Eleanor exhaled slowly. "She won't stay with Alexander, not when I'm not there." Patricia nodded as if she understood far more than what was said. "Come in." They settled in a private room, one with soft yellow walls and framed quotes about courage and self-worth. Words Elena once read for comfort, now they felt like a mirror. Grace slept peacefully in her carrier, her tiny breaths a steady rhythm in the tense silence. Patricia pushed a stack of files forward. "Are you ready to go over your options?" Helena didn't sit right away. Her fingers ghosted over the strap of the car seat, her nerves trembling. For a moment, she felt the full weight of what she was doing. This wasn't just preparing to leave her husband. It was rebuilding her entire life from the ground up, with a baby on her hip. Finally, she lowered herself into the chair. "Yes, I'm ready." Patricia studied her for a moment. "You've changed, Elena." "I had to," she whispered. Back at the penthouse, Alexander stood in the nursery doorway long after Elena left. He stared at the rocking chair she always used, at the half-folded baby blanket she'd left behind, at the quiet that filled the space. Something inside him splintered. He pulled out his phone and checked Elena's location. Disabled. He checked her last text messages. Dry, short, distant. He checked the baby's diaper bag. Half empty. She was preparing for something. He wasn't stupid. He could spot a shift in a market trend within seconds. He could smell tension in a negotiation. He sensed it now. His wife was moving in a direction that didn't involve him. He refused to believe it. "She won't leave," he muttered to himself. "She won't." But the words sounded weak even to his own ears. Alexander walked to the kitchen, pacing, picking up things and setting them down. His expensive watch, his cufflinks, the untouched dinner plates from last night. He stared at the cold steak, feeling something deeper than hunger knot in his stomach. Guilt. It clung to him like a shadow. He poured himself a glass of water and stared at his reflection in the window. Hair perfectly styled, tailored shirt, sharp jawline. Yet he looked nothing like a husband, nothing like a father, nothing like a man who deserved the woman he swore he would love forever. He swallowed hard. He needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them. At the law office, Patricia flipped open a folder. "You've documented everything. Hotels, charges, photos, dates, witnesses. This is more than enough to protect you." Elena nodded. "I didn't collect it to ruin him. I needed to be ready." "You were preparing for your child," Patricia agreed. "Not all women have that strength." Elena looked down at Grace's sleeping face. "She's the reason I'm doing this." Patricia pushed another document forward. "I've also drafted a custody proposal, one that favors you heavily." Elena froze. Custody. The word stung and healed at the same time. "Elena, do you want sole custody?" Patricia asked gently. Tears formed before she could stop them. "I don't want to take her father away. I need her to be safe. I need her to grow up loved. I need her to know her worth. And I don't trust Alexander to give her that consistently." "That's why we prioritize you," Patricia said. "You are her stability." Eleanor wiped her eyes, inhaling deeply. "What happens next?" Patricia folded her hands. "We prepare to file. You tell me when to serve him." Elena closed her eyes. She could almost hear the door slamming in her mind. the sound of her final exit, not just for herself, but for Grace. "I need time," Elena whispered. "And you have it," Patricia replied. Late that afternoon, when Elena came home, Grace asleep in her carrier, Alexander was already standing in the foyer waiting for her. His expression was too calm, too controlled, a dangerous calm. "Where were you?" he asked. "Out. With the baby?" "Yes." He stepped closer. "You turned off your location." "I don't owe you my every move," she said simply. His jaw tightened. "You do when you disappear with my daughter." "She's our daughter," Eleanor corrected, brushing past him toward the nursery. Alexander grabbed her wrist. She didn't flinch. She simply stared at him. "I'm tired, Alexander. Let go." The authority in her voice unsettled him. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't crying, she wasn't pleading. She was done. He released her slowly. "Elena, what's happening to us?" he breathed. She didn't answer right away. She laid Grace in her crib, adjusting her blanket, kissing her tiny cheek. Only when the baby settled did Elena face him. "What's happening?" she repeated quietly. "You're losing a wife who begged for your love, and you never heard her." His breath hitched. "Elena, I'm not the same woman you ignored. I'm not the same woman who waited by the door. I'm not the same woman who forgave you for the 100th time. I'm a mother now." She stepped closer, her voice steady. "And a mother doesn't stay in a home where she feels forgotten." He looked shattered, confused, offended. "A mother leaves," she finished. Alexander stared at her as if she had slapped him. "Elena, are you saying you're leaving me?" She didn't blink. "I'm saying I'm already halfway gone." That night, after she fell asleep holding Grace's hand, Alexander lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in his adult life, Alexander Kane was afraid, truly afraid, because something told him she wasn't bluffing. Something told him she wasn't weak anymore. Something told him she was planning something permanent. And the worst part, he knew he deserved it. Elena woke before sunrise, her body heavy but her mind sharp. The air in the penthouse felt different now, thicker, heavier, crowded with everything unsaid. She slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Grace, and stepped into the hallway. Behind her, faint rustling came from the guest room where Alexander slept. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The days of tiptoeing around his moods were over. She made coffee in silence. The bitter scent filled the kitchen, and for once it didn't make her stomach twist. She sipped slowly, staring out at the skyline, the same skyline she had admired when she first moved here as a hopeful young wife. Back then, the city felt like possibility. Now it felt like a cage. She set the mug down just as the softest cry drifted down the hallway. "Grace." Elena went immediately, her steps instinctive, maternal. She scooped her baby into her arms, breathing in her warm baby scent, stroking her tiny back until the cries faded into soft whimpers. "You're okay, baby," she whispered. "Mama's here. Mama's not going anywhere." But even as she said it, her chest tightened, because she was going somewhere, just not with him. When Elena carried Grace back to the living room, Alexander appeared in the doorway. His shirt was wrinkled, hair a mess, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He looked human, vulnerable even. He wasn't used to sleepless nights. He wasn't used to feeling unsteady. He wasn't used to not knowing what his wife planned. "Elena," he said softly, "can we talk?" She didn't sit. "About what?" He swallowed. "About us. There is no us right now." That hit him harder than anger ever could. He stepped closer, then stopped when she shifted Grace protectively. "I know I've been distant, busy. I know I messed up." "Messed up," she repeated, eyebrows lifting. "That's how you describe years of betrayal." His stare dropped to the floor. "Elena, let's just slow down. Think this through. We can fix it." "We?" Her voice broke into a bitter laugh. "Alexander, you stopped choosing we a long time ago." He flinched. He wasn't used to hearing the truth delivered so cleanly. "I can change," he tried again, voice cracking. "Just tell me what you want." "I want a husband who comes home," she said quietly. I want a partner who shows up. I want a father for our daughter. But those things aren't items I can order from you like a business deliverable, Alexander. They're choices, and you chose everything except us." She brushed past him, heading toward the kitchen to make Grace's bottle. He followed at a distance, desperate now, the panic swelling in his chest. "Elena, I'm trying—" "No," she cut in without looking back. "You're reacting, that's different." He swallowed hard. She fed Grace while standing by the window, bathed in the soft grey morning light, her daughter's little fingers curled around her thumb. Alexander watched silently, his heart twisting at the sight. This was his family, his wife, his baby girl. And they looked painfully complete without him. "We were happy once," he murmured. "Were we?" Elena asked. "Or was I just good at covering the cracks you kept making?" He stared at her, unable to deny it. She rocked Grace gently, voice steadying. "Happiness doesn't come from pretending, Alexander. It comes from presence, from love, from effort. And I can give you that," he insisted. "Just don't leave." She finally turned to him, her expression a blend of heartbreak and resolve. "I'm not making threats," she said softly. "I'm making decisions." "Decisions about what?" he asked, even though he already knew. "About our future," she whispered. He stepped forward, emotion thick in his voice. "Elena, please, don't take Grace away from me." Her breath caught. "I'm not taking her away. I'm taking her somewhere healthy, somewhere stable, somewhere peaceful." "And I can give her that," he snapped, desperation slipping into anger. She raised her chin. "Then why haven't you?" He had no answer. The silence between them felt like a breaking point. Grace finished her bottle and drifted back to sleep. Elena laid her gently in the crib, smoothing her soft hair, kissing her tiny forehead. When she straightened, Alexander stood behind her, arms crossed over his chest, pain thinly masked by frustration. "What did you talk about with Patricia?" he demanded. Elena froze. He had guessed. She turned slowly. "That's my business." "It is our business," he argued. "She's a divorce lawyer, Elena." Her jaw tightened. "So is every lawyer who represents a woman who refuses to be small." He stared at her, eyes widening in disbelief. "You're actually doing this?" She held his gaze. "I'm doing what I should have done the moment I realized you valued your image more than our family." "You're not thinking clearly," he argued. "This is postpartum stress, exhaustion. You just had a baby." Her expression turned ice cold. "Do not reduce my clarity to hormones." He shut his mouth, because the fire in her eyes wasn't exhaustion. It was awakening. "Elena, you're my wife," he said weakly. "You can't just walk out." She breathed slowly, her voice soft but deadly precise. "I already packed a suitcase." His face crumpled. "Elena." She stepped away. "I'm not leaving today," she said. "Or tomorrow. Not yet." Hope flickered in his eyes. "But I am leaving." It extinguished instantly. And for the first time in their marriage, Alexander Kane, powerful, unstoppable, untouchable, looked utterly, devastatingly human. Because he realized he was no longer fighting for a wife. He was fighting for a woman who had already found her strength. And fighting a mother's resolve was a battle he couldn't win. The next few days unfolded like a slow, silent unraveling, threads snapping one by one, but with no shouting, no scenes, no dramatic confrontations, just quiet distance, cold stillness, careful movements. And that, more than anything, drove Alexander insane. He watched Elena move through the penthouse like a ghost, finally learning she didn't owe the walls her presence. She no longer asked where he was going, no longer asked when he'd be home, no longer paused to listen when he spoke. She stopped reacting altogether. And for a man whose ego lived on attention, the silence was torture. Alexander felt himself spiraling. He arrived home early every night, early for the first time in years. He brought dinner, flowers, gifts for Grace, cheesecake from the bakery Elena loved, things he never once thought he'd need to do to keep his own wife. But nothing broke the wall she'd built. One evening he stood in the doorway watching her fold Grace's tiny onesies. She was humming softly, her hair falling over her shoulder, her face calm in a way he couldn't recognize. She looked peaceful, and it killed him. "Elena," he said quietly. She didn't look up. "Yes? Can we talk? Really talk?" "I'm busy with Grace," he exhaled shakily. "Please." She paused mid-fold, then slowly turned to face him. "What do you want, Alexander?" He moved closer. "I want us, our family. I know I haven't been the best husband or father, but I can be better." She stared at him with a stillness that was almost gentle. "You should have wanted that before you realized you might lose me." "I do want it now," he said quickly. "I'll do anything." Elena shook her head. "You're not fighting for me. You're fighting the idea of losing control." He blinked hard. "That's not true, isn't it?" He opened his mouth to reply, but Grace began to fuss in her crib. Elena turned away from him instantly, lifting her daughter with tenderness that made his chest ache. He watched her rock the baby, whispering soft words. She looked like a mother who could shield the world with her bare hands. He wasn't part of that world anymore. "Elena," he said again, voice cracking, "just tell me what to do." She didn't turn. "The fact that you're asking that now shows how long you haven't been paying attention." The next morning, Alexander acted before thinking. He took the day off, something he had never done. His assistant nearly fainted over the phone. He said he needed time to focus on his marriage. But when he stepped into the living room, ready to show Eleanor he was serious, he found her already dressed, diaper bag packed, car seat by the door. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Out," she replied simply. "With Grace?" "Yes." He stepped in front of her. "Elena, at least tell me where." She raised her chin. "Somewhere I feel safe." He felt something twist violently inside his chest. "You don't feel safe with me?" "I don't feel seen by you," she corrected. "It's worse." She tried to step around him. He gently caught her arm. "Elena, stop, please. Talk to me." She met his eyes and he saw nothing but exhaustion, years of it. "I begged for your time," she whispered. "I begged for your attention, for your loyalty, for your presence. I begged until my voice died." Her voice shook. "I'm done begging." Grace whimpered softly in her car seat, and Eleanor knelt to soothe her. Alexander watched, each second feeling like sand slipping through his fingers. "Elena," he tried again, voice trembling. "Don't leave, not like this." She looked up at him. "I'm not leaving today," then added, "but I am leaving." His heart dropped. "Do I get the chance to fix anything?" he asked. She wiped a tear from her own cheek, the first he'd seen in days. "You had the chance every night you chose someone else." She lifted Grace's carrier, walked past him, and closed the door behind her. He leaned his head against the wood, breath shaking. The whole way outside felt colder, emptier, heavier. Because for the first time he truly saw it. She wasn't bluffing. She wasn't being emotional. She wasn't trying to punish him. She was preparing to live without him. Elena drove to the little house she had leased, the one Alexander didn't know about yet. The one with the light blue shutters and a tiny front porch. Not fancy, not extravagant, but warm, quiet, real. She walked through the room slowly, Grace resting against her shoulder. The bare living room. The small kitchen with sunlight spilling across the counters. The modest bedroom she planned to fill with softness and peace. "Can you feel it?" she whispered to her daughter. "This is home, our home." Grace blinked sleepily, her tiny hand curling around Elena's necklace. Elena smiled through tears. "I'm doing this for you, for us." Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A text from Patricia. "Just say the word when you're ready. Everything is in place." Elena stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Soon." Back at the penthouse, Alexander sat in Grace's empty nursery, holding her stuffed lamb to his chest, the silence swallowing him whole. He whispered to the dim room, "Elena, please don't go." But the room stayed silent, because nothing in that home belonged to him anymore. Not his wife, not his daughter, not even the life he claimed to love. And he was finally realizing it. Too slowly, too late. That weekend, the penthouse felt wrong in every imaginable way. It was too quiet, too clean, too cold, like a hotel room someone had already checked out of. Alexander walked from room to room as if searching for pieces of Elena he knew he'd pushed away. He found nothing. Not her scent, not her laughter, not the soft warmth she once carried with her everywhere she went. Only emptiness. He checked the nursery again, as if hoping she'd magically be there with Grace. The crib was neatly made, the rocking chair still, the tiny socks in the drawer folded just as Elena always kept them. Too perfect. Too untouched. It made his stomach twist. He glanced at the stuffed lamb lying on its side and swallowed the knot rising in his chest. How did I let this happen? He whispered to no one, but he already knew the answer. Elena left him long before she physically walked out the door. He just never noticed, too busy feeding his ego to notice his home starving. In the kitchen, the housekeeper approached him cautiously. "Sir, Mrs. Kane took only what she needed for the baby. She didn't take anything of hers." "She didn't take anything?" His voice cracked more than he expected. "No, sir. Nothing personal. Not even jewelry." He closed his eyes. Jewelry meant nothing to her anymore. Only her daughter did. Meanwhile, Elena carried Grace through the aisles of a small supermarket near her new neighborhood. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above her. The air smelled of fresh bread and laundry detergent, and the cashier greeted her with an easy smile. No intrusive questions, no whispers, no staring at her like she was a trophy on someone's arm. She fit here. She bought baby formula, wipes, tiny pajamas with butterflies, and a soft blanket for Grace. Simple things, real things, normal things. Things she hadn't done for herself in years. Her phone buzzed. "Alexander." "Where are you?" "Alexander. Please, at least tell me Grace is okay." Elena typed slowly. "Elena, she's fine." A few seconds later, "Alexander, where are you? Please don't shut me out." She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. For years she had been an open book. Now she was a locked door, and he finally understood the value of knocking. But she didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. She pushed the cart forward and gently rocked Grace's carrier as she walked. "Mama's not shutting him out," she told her baby softly. "Mama's choosing peace." Grace cooed in reply. When Elena stepped outside, sunlight bathed her face. The wind was cool. The world felt wide. She held Grace close, inhaling her soft baby smell. "This is what life is supposed to feel like," she whispered. "No anxiety, no loneliness, no waiting for someone who didn't come home. Just breathing." Alexander didn't breathe easily at all. That afternoon he drove to his friend Marcus's place, a quiet townhouse outside the city. Marcus opened the door with a wary expression. "Alex, you look like hell. I need advice." Marcus sighed and stepped aside to let him in. They sat at the kitchen table, the quiet hum of the fridge filling the silence. "It's Elena," Alexander said. "She's distant, different, cold." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Cold?" "Alex, she stayed warm through everything you put her through. You pushed her to this." Alexander clenched his jaw. "I know I messed up." "No," Marcus cut in. "You didn't mess up. You wrecked your marriage repeatedly." Alexander looked down at his hands. "I didn't think she would ever leave," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Why? Because you thought she needed you?" He nodded. Marcus sat back. "Elena always needed one thing from you, Alex. Your time, your attention, your loyalty, and you treated those things like they were disposable." "I didn't mean to," Alexander murmured. "But you did." Alexander rubbed his forehead. "I don't know how to fix it." Marcus stared at him, pity and frustration blending together. "You can't fix something you ignored for years in a week," he said gently. "And you can't demand love from a woman who finally learned to love herself." Alexander's throat tightened. "What do I do?" "Let her breathe," Marcus replied. and pray she doesn't decide the air is better without you. Later that night, Elena sat on the small porch of her new house, Grace asleep in her arms. A tiny lamp glowed beside the front door. Crickets chirped in the quiet street. The night felt gentle, a rarity she didn't take for granted. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Alexander. Alexander, I'm sorry. Call me, please. She closed her eyes. He had said sorry before, many times, too many times. But now, she didn't feel anything when she read it. No guilt, no hope, no desire to rush back. She simply felt free. Elena typed a single short message. Elena, we'll talk soon, but not today. She set the phone aside and kissed Grace's forehead. You and me, she whispered, one step at a time. The porch light flickered gently, like a small blessing. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. And for the first time in a long time, Eleanor felt like she finally existed. Back in the penthouse, Alexander opened her message and felt his heart drop. We'll talk soon. Not I miss you. Not I'll be home tonight. Not we'll fix this. Just distance. Cold, calculated distance. He sat alone at the dining table where candles once burned on date nights long forgotten. The chair across from him was empty. The silence pressed against his chest like a weight he couldn't lift. Please, he whispered to the emptiness, don't leave me. But the empty room stayed silent, because Elena wasn't there to save him anymore. She was saving herself and their daughter. And Alexander was slowly realizing what it meant to lose the woman who once would have given him the world. Days turned into a week, and the space between Elena and Alexander stretched wider, no longer a crack, but a canyon he had carved with his own hands. And now he was standing at the edge, staring into the emptiness, realizing she was no longer on the other side. Every morning he woke up reaching for her out of habit. Every morning he found cold sheets. Every morning he remembered she wasn't coming back. Not here, not to this life, not to him. Alexander tried everything, calls, texts, emails, even sending flowers to places she didn't visit anymore. He left voicemails that grew shakier by the day. Elena, please let me talk to you. Elena, I'm trying. I promise I'm trying. Elena, don't walk away. Not like this. But each message was met with silence or short, polite replies that sliced him deeper than screaming ever could. She was no longer angry. She was done. And nothing terrified a man more than a woman who no longer cared to fight. Elena spent her days settling into the little house, slowly, quietly, with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Grace's laughter echoed softly through the small rooms. The neighborhood kids drew chalk art on the sidewalks. Old couples walked their dogs at sunset. The world here moved differently, calmer, kinder, honest. Elena found herself breathing easier. She found herself smiling at strangers. She found herself humming while folding laundry. She found herself simply living. One afternoon, after a walk, she placed Grace on a blanket in the living room. Sunlight spilled through the windows, warming the carpet. Grace reached for the rings on her play gym, kicking happily, babbling to herself. Watching her, Elena realized something profound. Her daughter had adapted instantly. Babies don't cling to spaces, they cling to love. And here, love filled every corner. Elena sat beside her and stroked her cheek. You're so happy, aren't you? Grace squealed and grabbed her mother's finger. This was right, Elena whispered. This was the right choice. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Patricia, ready when you are. Just say the word. Elena stared at the screen. A lump formed in her throat, not from fear, not from doubt, but from certainty. Soon, but not yet, because she needed one more thing before she filed. She needed closure. That evening, Alexander sat in the nursery again. Grace's lamb clutched to his chest. He didn't turn on the lights. The room felt like a graveyard for all the things he should have done differently. He replayed every mistake, every late night, every lie, every ignored tear. Every moment he dismissed her emotions as overreacting. Every time she begged him to come home and he chose someone else instead. Every time he assumed she'd never leave. He pressed his palm against his eyes, breath shaking. I didn't think she'd actually go, he whispered. Marcus called again, voice blunt as always. Alex, if you want even a chance to fix this, you need to show her something real. Not flowers, not money, not empty words. Change. Change. The word haunted him. Elena wasn't moved by apologies. She wasn't impressed by grand gestures. She wasn't softened by guilt. She needed consistency. She needed effort. She needed a father to her daughter and a partner to her soul. And he hadn't been either. Not once in months. Alexander stood up slowly, as if rising from the ruins of a version of himself he didn't want to be anymore. He wiped his face with the back of his hand and picked up his phone. He opened the banking app. He opened the legal files. He opened the childcare schedules. He sat at his desk and began making calls to his HR team, to his board, to the charity organization his wife loved, but he never bothered attending. By midnight, Alexander Kane had done something he'd never done in his adult life. He cleared his schedule. He canceled his nightlife commitments. He shut down every meeting that led to temptation. He took a leave from work. He pushed everything aside except one thing, his wife and child. But he knew it might be too late. He just hoped it wasn't. The next morning, Eleanor was pushing Grace's stroller down the quiet neighborhood street when she saw a sleek black car pull up beside the curb. Her heart dropped when the door opened and Alexander stepped out. He wasn't in a suit. He wasn't polished. He wasn't wearing the sharp CEO mask. He looked human. His eyes looked tired, softer, humbled in a way she had never seen. "Elena," he said quietly, "please don't walk away. Let me speak." She froze, the stroller between them. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice calm, steady. "I needed to see you. I needed to see our daughter." Elena bristled slightly. "She's fine." "I know," he said gently, "because she has you." The sincerity in his voice shook her for one fragile moment, but she didn't let it show. He stepped closer, hands trembling slightly. "Elena, I'm sorry. You've said that before." "I know," he whispered, "but this time I mean it with every breath I have left." Silence stretched. Birds chirped. A dog barked in the distance. Grace babbled softly from her stroller, kicking her feet. Alexander swallowed, his voice breaking. "I've been living like a man who believed he had endless time to make things right. I thought you would always wait. I thought you would always forgive me." His voice cracked. "I took advantage of your love, and I lost it." Elena tightened her grip on the stroller handle. "You didn't lose it," she said quietly. "You threw it away." He flinched, visibly, painfully, as her words hit him. "Elena, what do I do? How do I fix this?" "You don't fix it," she said softly. "You learn from it." The breeze lifted her hair. Grace reached for her mother's hand. Alexander's gaze followed the gesture, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And us? Is there Annis left?" Eleanor looked at him with a sadness that didn't sting anymore, because she had already healed the part of herself he broke. There might be a way to be civil, to co-parent, to raise Grace with love from both sides, but a marriage. She shook her head. "That chapter closed the day you made me feel alone, even with you standing in the same room." His eyes filled with tears. "Elena, please. You can't beg for a woman you ignored," she said softly. "You can only accept who she is now." She stepped back from him. And with their daughter as witness, Elena spoke the truth neither of them could escape now. "I'm filing soon." Alexander's chest collapsed. His breath hitched. "Elena, don't..." But she cut him off gently. "This is the first decision I've made in years that makes me feel safe." Grace cooed again, reaching up toward both parents. Elena gave her daughter a soft smile, then looked back at the man she once loved. "I hope you find your strength, Alexander, but I already found mine." She turned the stroller away and walked back toward the little blue house, her steps steady and sure. Alexander stood frozen, watching the life he wanted slip further down the sidewalk, further into a future he no longer had a place in. And for the first time, he understood something devastating. Elena wasn't his wife anymore. She was her own woman, and he was just a chapter she had finally finished reading. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the nursery. My baby girl cooed softly in her crib, oblivious to the storm that had raged around her. For a long moment, I just watched her tiny hands curl and uncurl, feeling a strange mix of tenderness and power. I had survived the betrayal. I had survived him. I heard the front door open, the familiar click of his expensive shoes on the hardwood floor. My heart skipped a beat, but not with fear. Something much stronger had replaced it: clarity. He stopped in the hallway, clearly expecting me to greet him with weakness, but there was none left. Only the woman who had quietly, deliberately dismantled the life he had tried to control. We need to talk, he started, his voice hesitant, unfamiliar. I held my baby close, letting her warmth settle over me like armor. Talk? I echoed, my tone calm but icy. There's nothing left to say. You made your choices, I made mine. He swallowed hard, shifting from foot to foot, the arrogance gone, replaced by fear or maybe regret. I never thought You underestimated me, I said softly, cutting him off. And you underestimated the strength of a woman who refuses to be broken. You thought you could throw our family away for a thrill, but you forgot one thing. Love doesn't live in your money or your deceit. It lives here. I pressed my chest, over my heart. And here, I added, glancing at the crib where my daughter slept. His eyes flickered toward her, and for a moment I saw a shadow of shame cross his face. He had lost everything he truly needed while chasing fantasies he could never grasp. I can fix it, he stammered, almost pleading. I laughed softly, not cruelly, but with the quiet finality of someone who had already won. No, you can't fix this, but that's okay. I've already fixed myself, and I've built something you'll never understand. A life with honesty, love, and a future where betrayal has no power. He opened his mouth again, but I didn't let him speak. I walked past him, past the hollow echo of our broken past, and into the bright morning that awaited me and my daughter. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent, unstoppable, alive, and so were we. Later, I watched my baby girl take her first unsteady steps across the living room floor. Her laughter was a song that no deceit could drown out, and as I held her in my arms, I realized that the most devastating betrayals could also become the catalysts for the strongest beginnings. The chapter of him was over. The story of us, my daughter and I, was only just beginning, and this time we were the authors of our own destiny. The sun was rising, and I finally felt free.